I've been telling a lot of stories that I've gathered from different places and different storytellers, but had a situation that happened on the no, it wasn't Sunday, it was a week or so ago, and found myself at a place that, as far as I knew, had no story. Now, the place is called Queen's Bath, and I think maybe all of you have been there, but Queen's Bath on the North Shore, right in the Princeville area. And I was there with a friend, and this friend asked me, what's the story about this place? Because almost every place in Hawaii has a story. I said, I don't know of any stories about this beautiful place. And she said, what about Queen Emma? And I said, well, Queen Emma never came down here. Queen's Bath, if you don't know what it is an beautiful enclosed tidal pool right on the ocean, down the cliffs from Princeville. Okay? And it's on the open ocean before you get to Honolulu Bay, if you're going in that direction. So it's a large pool. The main part of the pool that's swimmable is at least as big as this room, and maybe somewhat bigger. But it's a kind of a depression, and it's like a big shelf, and then here's this depression here, the deeper part of the pool, big and round right here. It goes off around like this and then out to the ocean. And up here is a little plateau. It's like something cut its way all the way around like that. And this part over here is not directly open to the ocean because there's coral and other rocks in the way, but that the waves splash in and fill up the pool and clean it out. Beautiful place. So I was thinking, this place needs a story. So I decided to ask the place for a story. Because in this philosophy, we believe that everything is alive, aware, and responsive. So I walked on the stones all around the whole area and asked the stones to tell me a story. And they did. And this is the story that they told me. It came through so fast that it's not like I've had time to memorize it, but this is the story that I was told. It's the legend of Queen's Bath. I ka waka hiko paha, ua noho I kea mokupuni mo'i wahine nani. Once upon a time, perhaps. Hawaiians love sometimes when they're telling stories and telling about things, if they're not absolutely 100% certain, they put a little word in there called paha, which means this is the way it is, perhaps. Okay? So once upon a time, perhaps, there lived on this island of Kauai, a beautiful woman, a beautiful queen. And she was well loved by all her subjects. Her face was round like the moon. Her back was straight as a cliff. This very Hawaiian way of describing beauty. Okay? Her hair flowed like pahoehoe lava, which is the kind that looks like pillows when it dries up. Okay? Her eyes sparkled like olivines, okay, in the sunlight. If you ever walked around the island and some places where there's a lot of stones, some of the beaches sometimes, you see these bright sparkles if the sun is shining on. Most often that's a crystal called olivine. People said her laughter was as joyful as the sound of the Waioli stream, which means joyful waters. And that stream goes down into Honolulu Bay. And a few lucky men said that her kiss was like the chill northern wind that makes your skin shiver. Now this queen, her name was Pualani, perhaps. She was very good to her people. She had the power to make the crops abundant, to make the fish fill the nets, to make the rain just enough and the sun just enough so that everyone was happy. Now Pualani spent most of her days surfing in Hanalei Bay. Oh, she loved surfing. That was her favorite spot on the whole island. Now, she went into the forest with her kalai la'o. Now, kalai la'o means a woodcutter. So there were people who specialized in this. So she would go into the forest with her kalai la'o and pick the best trees. Using her powers that she had, her mana, she picked the best trees for her surfboards. She picked wili wili for her kalai, for her 18-foot boards, which were called olo, and some of them were called kiko'o, 18-foot long surfboards. Now in those days, you know, surfing began in Hawaii. And they had the surfboards, and they were smooth and they were rounded, but they were flat. They didn't have the curves, they didn't have any fins on them. It took a lot of skill to do those. And the big ones they had were these 18-footers. And she had hers made of wili wili wood. She had used breadfruit trees for the short boards called alaya and kioe, because they had short boards in those days too, for the inner, you know, surfing on the inner smaller waves. And then koa, which is a very hard wood, a very beautiful wood, big, beautiful trees. She used koa for the onini board. And the onini board was a very difficult board that only experts could use. She was an expert, and when she felt like that, that's what she would use. So she had that made of kona. Now, once the trees were cut, they used large basalt ko'i. Now, they were actually called ko'i lipi. This is a big, let's see, do we have any here in the cases someplace? Yeah, over in that case over there. The biggest, it's called an adze, made of very crystallized lava rock. Very, very dense, very heavy. And those were used for axes. And those were called ko'i lipi. And so then they used that, and they were dragged down to the shore. They dragged them all the way down from the mountains down into Anini Lagoon. We go Anini Beach, a lot of people go. Anyway, down to the edge of Anini Lagoon, which is, if you're not familiar with the area, when you're going on the North Shore and you're heading toward Princeville, is a place where you come down almost through a tunnel of trees and cross a big, long, curving bridge. Okay? Well, on the Princeville side of that bridge, if you went Mackay toward the sea, you'd come to Anini Beach. So that's where they dragged the logs down there. Okay? Now, when they dragged them down there, they were shaped into surfboards by the experts with ko'i pahoa. Those are chisels. And then they were smoothed and finished with kikoni. These are very small little adzes, which look something like a chisel, but these were very small, very fine for the smoothing work at the end of a carving of wood. And then they were polished with porous lava rock and finally polished with coral. And then they were smoothed over. The final smoothing over finish was done with kukui nut oil. And then when they felt they were ready, they brought the boards over to Hanalei Bay. Now this is where Queen Pualani, she was at the place that today we call Black Park, near where the pier is. And so that's where she waited, and they brought the surfboards down there, and she checked them out. Now, Queen Pualani was very tolerant. I mean, she allowed people a lot of freedom, and she was very seldom, real strict about anything, but about her surfboards, she was very particular. So she examined them from one end to the other. She examined them for smoothness. She examined them for shape. She examined them for size. She examined them for spirit, because they're still considered alive, and each board would have a different spirit. And they had to make a lot of them for her, because she would pick the best, and those she would use for herself, and she would share with her sister, Princess Noinani. Now, Pualani has the name of, like, heavenly flower. And her sister, Noinani, means beautiful mist. Okay? Very poetic names that they would have for people in those days. Anyway, you can, where they made the surfboards, you can still see down there, if you go down to Anini Beach, before you get to the park, why, again, right on the shore, there's these large stones where you can see where they sharpened adzes in the old days. They're still sitting out there. Now, the rest of the surfboards, the ones she didn't use, she gave to her chiefs, the ones who were in charge of the different districts of the island, okay? And then she went surfing. Now, in those days, there were some of the chiefs, because that's what she was also called, a chief. There were some of the chiefs, when they wanted to go surfing, where they would put a kapu on the whole area where they wanted to surf, so no one else could surf. They wanted it all to themselves. But Queen Pualani was not like that. Okay? She let anybody come down to the water to do their fishing, to do their swimming, to do their bathing. She would let other chiefs from different parts, high chiefs and low chiefs, surf along with her. That wasn't any very important to her. According to her mood and according to the surf conditions, of course, sometimes she'd choose a long board, sometimes she'd choose a short board, and sometimes she'd go way, way out in the far surf, which actually today is called King's Reef. And sometimes she'd take the middle surfing area, and that's sometimes called Queen's Reef. And then sometimes she'd take the waves that were real close in. Just depended on how she felt that day. So every day that she could, stormy or sunny or windy or calm, really didn't matter. Why, that's where she'd go. Now, and then when she was finished, she'd have a big luau on the beach. Everybody have a great time. Now, she was a perfect queen except for one strange thing. Because unknown to everybody except her sister, she was actually a mo'o, which means a dragon. She was a mo'o nui loa, a giant lizard, a dragon. But she never showed her dragon form when people were around. She loved her subjects, loved her people, cared for them. But at night, she had to turn back into the dragon. So when everybody was asleep all night at night, and if she had a lover, he was sound asleep, she would go out and she would go down to the water and she would turn into a big, big mo'o and she would slip into the ocean. Now, in order to be a human, she had to condense all of her energy because she was her natural form was this big dragon. So she had to condense all of her energy and make it real tight to fit into that human form. And so she was that way all day while she was with her human beings. But when she went at night, she had to release that form. And when she did that, whoa, she got so hot, steaming hot, hot as molten lava, dangerously hot. So she never wanted to be in that form when she was around people because her aura, her energy field would harm them, would hurt them. But she had to let off that energy. So she'd go into the ocean and she'd swim underwater. Maybe if you were able to see her, you'd see this bubbling, steaming line of water going from the shore of Honolulu Bay out into the ocean. And then she'd swim real, real deep. And sometimes she'd go Kilauea way, which means in the direction of Kilauea. Sometimes she'd go Haena way, in the other direction. And she'd swim deep and swim all the way around the whole island. Spend the whole night doing that until she got back. And she wanted to make sure that her people were protected and that everything was well and fine on all parts of the island. At the same time, when she would do that, her sister, usually during the daytime, now her sister would stay in the area at night and take care of things, but in the daytime, her sister didn't have the problem of heat because she turned into a mist. A beautiful rainbow mist. A particular name of that kind of mist, let's see, her sister was a Ko'i'ula is the name of that mist, Ko'i'ula. Now, this is not the same as a rainbow. It's a rainbow-colored mist. If you see it sometimes, it's kind of a rare thing, but if you see it sometimes, you can either see it as a rolling mist along the shore, almost like you had fog moving along the shore, but it's rainbow colored. And sometimes you'll see it as a mist on the mountainside, but it's not a rainbow. It's like a cloud that's going through the different ridges as this mist. Okay, but that's the form she would take. And she would go all over the island, checking out the places that her sister couldn't see in her dragon form. Well, life went on like this for a very, very long time. Because Pualani and her sister lived a very long time. Perhaps 400 years. Perhaps 4,000 years. Perhaps 400,000 years. These are numbers in Hawaiian that are used to express a whole big bunch, okay, without having to be specific. At any rate, she did live a very, very long time, but finally she knew the time had come for her to try out a different kind of life. And so she knew that it was time to lay down and let her body pass into the earth. But she had to do this very carefully because she had to do it in her dragon form. And so one day she had her last surfing as a human. She had her last feast as a human. She had her last loving as a human. And late that night, in the middle of the night, she went down to the shore, took her dragon form, bubbled her way out, but she was so old and so tired by now that she didn't swim very far. So she swam around Po'a Point, which is where Princeville Hotel is situated. And she swam a little further past Kinomeni Beach, which is where some of the condos are there that are on the edge on the cliffs. And just a little further before a little bay that's called Little Hanalei. Actually, its name is Hanalei on the map, on the topo map. And it's the one where from Princeville a stream comes down and the waterfall falls into the ocean. That's Little Hanalei. Well, she stopped before that. She saw this nice, smooth, flat shelf of lava. And so she crawled up onto the shore, curled up in her dragon body, rested her head down here, let her tail stay out near the water, where the water came in. And she went to sleep, and she passed away. And her spirit went to another life. Now, her body was so hot still that it just burned right down through the lava. And the flesh, of course, was eaten by the sea creatures. And finally, there was no more of that left. Some people say, however, if you go to this area, you see all these round, what look like boulders in the water. And some people say that those are her bones, still resting there. You can see the big area, the pool where people swim today is where her head rested. Okay? And if you follow that out all the way, you can see the whole channel where her body melted down through the lava and where her tail still stuck out into the ocean. And the ocean comes directly into that spot. Okay? Now, we don't know whether she had any children. Mainly because no one has been up late enough at night and swum deep enough in the ocean to see if there's another dragon going along. We're pretty sure her sister did have some children, though, because you can still see those very special kinds of mists. We know that Pualani was there because we can still see the perfect outline of her body down there by the shores. And so if she does have any children, maybe, if you're in the right place, the right time, in the right mood, coming out from Blackpot Beach, you might see a steaming, bubbling trail of lava heading out to the ocean because maybe her great-granddaughter or her great-great-granddaughter or her great-great-great-granddaughter is still taking care of us. Perhaps. All right. Now, what we had here in a number of different ways is a story of aloha, is a story of love. This was a story of a queen who really loved her people. Treated them now with the aloha spirit, which means she treated them with kindness. She treated them with caring. She treated them with friendship, just as loving a way as possible. Right? She went up and she had her kalai la'au, her woodcutters, who knew what she loved. Of course, the other thing obviously came out in the story. She not only loved the people, she loved lovers also as well, but she also loved surfing. Now, she really loved surfing. And the woodcutters loved their work. They loved to go in the forest and they loved to cut their wood. This was not a burden to them. And to be able to use their expertise doing something they loved to make a work of fine craftsmanship, why, that was exciting to them, to be able to express their love in that way. And she showed her love for their work by really looking at it. She didn't just say, oh, thank you for the surfboard, and take it and start to go swimming. She looked at it. She saw what they did. She saw the smoothness. She saw the skill. She admired the craftsmanship. She blessed what their labor had brought her. And of course, while the people were making those woodcutters were making the surfboards, and they were also blessing their tools and thanking their tools for all the good work that their tools did and how finely they lasted. And they thanked the trees and blessed the trees when they went up there, because blessing, which is admiring, appreciating, wanting good for something, is a form of aloha as well. The queen did not, well, let's look at, first of all, she loved her sister, because she shared the very best that she had with her sister. And her sister returned that love by helping her to take care of the island. She loved the people so much, she let them use the bay, which was so important to them for fishing and for bathing and for all the things that they had to do as a people. Sometimes she would even, the story told this, but I didn't mention it, but sometimes she would even not surf a particular day so they could have a hukilau. And a hukilau is where they take a big net, when the big schools of fish used to come in the bay a long time ago. And they'd take this big net and go all the way around and catch just enough for what they had to eat. Maybe if you go to a luau today, why, you can get to dance, what they call dance the hukilau song, okay? And it's pretending like you're pulling in the nets. But she loved the people that much too. She loved her life as a human being. She didn't complain. She didn't say anything against it. She did what she did, what she could do, and made use of every part of it. And yet, she also loved her true nature. She loved her nature as a dragon. She did not bemoan the fact that she had to go down, oh, well, I got to be a dragon again tonight. No. That was part of her. That was part of life. That was part of her power. And she loved that and did it and used it for the good of the people as well. And even her final act when she was leaving was an act of love. So once again, she went to a place where she would not endanger anybody. Now, whether she had this in mind or not, we don't know, but this may have been an act of love of the rocks that received her body, that formed themselves into a pool that people today can still enjoy, which is one of the most beautiful spots on earth. We have all kinds of love in here. We have love for people. We have love for things. And that just not means the greedy wanting it, but the caring of them as well, and the appreciation of them as well. The love for activities, the love of responsibilities, carrying them out with love, not with resistance. When we talk about the aloha spirit, it's not just a friendly hand waving so that you feel good, you feel invited, you feel welcome. That's an important part of it, sure. But that's only a very small part of it. Because if you look up the word, it also includes mercy and compassion, as well as kindness and gentleness and all the good things that you can feel for and act toward people. It's the most powerful thing there is. And when I asked, with appreciation and with respect, which is part of it, to the stones, tell me a story. This whole story out of their love, out of all those rocks. Because all the appreciation that we've given them through the years, the story came pouring in, and then I was able to share it with you. Love is powerful. Love is beautiful. People sometimes have trouble actually expressing it in their life. Sometimes they do this because they're afraid that they'll express love and they'll give love and they won't get love back. Well, or they don't want to give love to these people or to this thing over here because then they think that'll take it away from these over here. So some people are jealous if you're friendly with someone else, and they see that as a threat to them. I just watched a movie the other night where a young woman was interested, high school, was interested in a young man, and the young man was a very friendly person, and there was another young woman, to thank him for a favor, just gave him a little kiss on the peck on the cheek, and the young woman stormed off in a jealous rage. That's not love. Okay? Love is not jealousy. Jealousy comes from anger and fear. That's not love. Love has nothing to do with fear, and it has nothing to do with anger. Love has nothing to do with grief. Love has nothing to do with resentment. Love has nothing to do with control. None of those things have anything to do with love. And love is infinite. You can't give too much and you can't lose it. You can stop loving. So if you do something and, if you do something for somebody and they do not appreciate it, there are a lot of people who will no longer do anything for that person. Well, what that tells us is that they didn't do anything for that person out of love. They were trying to buy appreciation. And then when the person didn't make the payment of appreciation, then they were angry and upset. Well, they weren't giving what they had with love in the first place. Because when you love, you simply love. You don't do it to get something back. You do it because loving feels good. Actually, that's the wonder. Love feels good. It feels good to do something nice and kind for someone. That's what feels good. There's the benefit. If you're doing it for their appreciation or for their admiration or out of a sense of pride, look what I did, or whatever, you're not dealing with love at all. You're doing something else. Okay? Love is simply giving, and then love, when you give love like that, now here's a curious thing that happens in the world. When you give love like that, love increases in your life. Because someone said once something like, to those who give, more shall be given. Okay? That's what happens. When you give love, it increases in your life. It happens in all kinds of ways. When you smile at someone, that particular person may not smile back. That's okay. You've given them a gift. Maybe they're thinking of something else. Maybe they're in a bad mood. Maybe they're embarrassed and fearful. Maybe you have no idea what's going on in that other person's mind. But there's a part of people that we call the ku. And you can think of it as the subconscious or the body-mind. It's the invisible part of you, like so's your mind. But anyway, this is the part of you that is like a subconscious. And it always loves love. There's some people who won't take a compliment, which can be an act of love. But some people are very uncomfortable with that. But this inner part loves it. Oh yeah, thank you. Oh, that feels so good. And even when they don't smile, it will feel good inside. The gift is being received always when you give it. May not be acknowledged, but it's always being received. So every time you do any kind of an act of love, you're increasing the love in the world. The opposite, unfortunately, also holds true. Every time you get angry about something, you're increasing the anger in the world. Every time you get fearful about something, you're increasing the fear in the world. The more we can increase the love in the world, we have to do it, we have to start with it. You know, sending a pink light to the other side of the planet is nice, but not going to be nearly as effective as smiling somebody next to you, smiling at someone next to you. The more love we give, the more love increases in the entire world. You smile at somebody here on the island of Kauai or wherever you happen to live, and somebody in China is going to smile back. They won't know why. They just feel like smiling because it travels faster than light. Love has no limits. Love has no restrictions, no limitations at all. Love is good.